Hey everybody, welcome back to Pro AV Today. I am your host, Ben Thomas. Today's episode is a second episode focusing specifically on some of the ways that technology has empowered creators to do what they're best at, and that's create. We're going to talk a little bit about things like affordability, accessibility today, and even some of the decentralized ways that people have been able to leverage tools like AI and machine learning to help really create even better. So our guest today is Jordan Woods from Perifery, a division of DataCore. We so appreciate him joining us today. Jordan, thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Well, Jordan, set the table for us a little bit. I know some of our audience may not know who you are. Just give us a quick introduction of yourself, and would love to hear about some of the ways that you broke into the industry.
Sure. Yeah, I'm Jordan. Jordan Woods with DataCore, solution architect. Been in media entertainment for quite a while, in and out of stuff since at least the late 90s, coming from the post side. I did editing and cinematography before I figured out I should start building facilities and back-end integration side. So I've done everything from getting stuff to film out and working on cameras to building massive broadcast facilities and all sorts of different post houses all over the world. So yeah, it's been an interesting ride to go from having the change from film to digital to now, AI tools coming down to the pipe to do stuff, right? Where at one point I might be doing like green screen removal. Nowadays, our little phones just automatically do that for us. So it's incredible.
Jordan, one of the ways that we've seen technology inform the creator community is through affordability of technology, right? You look back 5-10 years ago, storage was more expensive than it was, specifically cloud storage. Even going back beyond that, right? Buying expensive cameras and, these shoulder mounted cameras gave way to the cheaper DSLR cameras in many cases. And then even going back to having to have film stock and then being able to shift to digital, that those technological advancements continue to make things cheaper for our creator economy. Talk about some of the ways that affordability makes it easier for folks.
Yeah, it's, I've been pretty surprised at that. It's just, so say for instance, you wanted to do some sort of 3D mock-up for an intro clip. Just have AI that just builds that to you in seconds. It blows my mind to know how hard that was, for somebody's specific job back in the day. And now a machine just kind of spits out, granted, maybe it's not the most perfect professional thing, right? But it gets you to the point of hey, maybe this is how I want my logo to look. Maybe this is how I want my intro to come in. It's absolutely incredible.
Well, and it's insane to see too, right? You talk about whether it's AI tools, whether it's, just cheaper storage and cloud storage and things like that. It's incredible now to see even tools like ChatGPT and some of the great stuff that you guys do over at Perifery, how that's not unattainable for people, right? It used to be in this realm of you priced so many people out, and now you've got smaller production houses, even in some cases freelancers that have the ability to leverage some of these tools.
Yeah, and that's an interesting part too. So right now, a lot of those tools are still living in the cloud. So while they're accessible at scale, it's still not cheap. So if you want to do larger AI operations, that still becomes difficult, and you still have the issue of going to the cloud, back into the cloud. So there is hurdles there. Like you're saying, for us at Perifery, we're trying to bring that a little bit more local, trying to address the problem of where that operation needs to happen. So that's an interesting issue in the future. I think other companies are going to try and jump that hurdle. It's different industries, right? Media entertainment's one, healthcare is another that's trying to get over that in terms of where do I need those operations to happen? Is it in the cloud, or can I get stuff a little bit local? Can I do those operations while the data is coming into stream? So there's a lot of areas for efficiency still to be had in that, various different workflows.
And Jordan, talk a little bit about the decentralization of the industry a little bit, right? When you look at historically production houses or firms used to be in-house, they used to run, cables up and down stairs, and we've moved in a lot of cases to a remote first workflow, right? Where people now, because of the speeds of technology and efficiency of it, people don't even need to edit proxies if they're in LA and their coworkers might be in New York, right? You're able to send that almost instantaneously over the network. Talk about some of the ways that those decentralized technologies have actually continued to impact our industry.
Yeah, that's come a lot. Obviously, COVID boosted that. I was really looking into that space prior to COVID, 2018, 2019. I was trying to figure out how to get that. I mean, a lot of people were, right? They were trying to figure out how to get these remote workflows really together. companies like Bebop were out there really trying to push the envelope on that, but it was the cost of utilizing all those cloud resources were still so expensive back then. It was almost the same cost as just buying machines and putting them in local areas. But with COVID, at least the positive side of it is it pushed everybody to have to find those workflows. So now it's actually becoming a lot cheaper to utilize that. So spaces like specifically, if you look at the corporate video side of that, where they need to leverage multiple different creators in different geographies, just for like economy of scale and to get the cost down for those productions. Because if you think about like the creator side, I believe that at least on the corporate side, the advertisers and all that, they're like some of the largest content producers across the nation. It's not just the big names that people think of, Disney or ABC. So for that side of that market, being able to leverage different cloud resources for that collaboration is, it's just game changer in the last 3 years for sure.
One thing that I love to kind of point out about our broadcast and AV industries is that you look at software tools or web-based tools like Canva and how it's made actual editing and distribution and requests and asset tagging so much easier for folks, because they now no longer have these traditional legacy systems that they have to monitor at all times and have a separate engineering staff. Now a lot of those things are able to be done whether through the cloud or on software-based tools. Talk about how that democratization and decentralization of some of those technologies has made it easier for folks.
Yeah, those tools have been changing a lot lately, and through various acquisitions, right? Even guys like Frame getting acquired by Adobe, and Teradici, which enabled the multi-collaboration environment, getting acquired by HPE. So I think everybody's seeing that space is super hot for collaboration. The next phase that I'm actually seeing a little bit, it's kind of an interesting change to that. Instead of just 100% cloud, it's kind of that mix of going a little bit more hybrid. So it's not necessarily going into your data center, but finding a co-location to have some part of your data. So you're still getting the collaboration and the sort of decentralization, but you're using somebody else's data center and or managed service provider to give that to you. So you keep the data yourself. It's not just sitting in the cloud, because going 100% cloud, while it's great, it makes things easy, you do lose some sort of control. So for a lot of the big names, I think going with a bit more of a hybrid approach has been, at least I've seen in a lot of places, seems to be a little bit more where their focus is starting to go. Just to it's a nice mix, right? Keeps a little bit of safety in there. So,
well, and to your point too, obviously, being able to have that flexibility in terms of workflows is incredibly important. But one of the things that the technological advances that we've reached at as an industry have empowered us is to kind of scale those one way or another, right? And you think about, I'll use a broadcast house, for example, right? Usually they had all this technology on the back end, and then they had to have teams and teams of engineers and people trying to figure out how to set up things like GPI triggers and, okay, how can I make this control and talk to that? We've actually removed a lot of those technical barriers, and media asset management is one of those places really specifically that we've removed a lot of those barriers. Can you talk about some of the ways that we've actually simplified the technology to make it easier for the creators to actually do what they're best at?
Yeah, and that's honestly where I see some of the biggest change coming. It's interesting. I talk about this with a lot of people, and I don't know. I'm not sure if I'm going to be wrong or right in the future, but I'd put money on this. So
it's okay. We're not going to hold you to it.
When you look at the way like asset managers are working right now, so one big thing that we're aiming at Perifery, right, is like we're trying to like enable smaller, lightweight AI operations closer to the edge, right? So as footage and content comes in, enrich the metadata in the objects on the fly. And I would say objects because it's a containerized object storage that we're pushing to the edge. So you want to embed that with the file that's moving through the workflow. And so you have the most amount of data. And then this is the part where it's differentiating from traditional MAM. So in the traditional asset management, there's a human that tags and does all this stuff. So we're trying to remove that to get away from those issues, because humans inherently have their own structure that they want that's personal. But then as that moves down the line and somebody else has to see it, they may not understand what that metadata meant for that file. So anyway, so moving that away from the person to the machine so that it becomes a little bit more automated, a little bit more enriched. And then you bring that through the entire pipeline. Then you get to the point of like where I'm really fascinated, right? So this is the term that people are starting to use, right? Like cognitive asset management. So where the machine understands and makes inferences on the data that's in there and then utilizes that metadata structure. All of a sudden you start asking yourself in the future, like, well, what's the point of my asset manager? if my system knows so much about the data, all I have to do is just query for the footage. It's almost remove that entire step. So now I could be wrong on that, but it might be a very fascinating future. Say in the next year, it could change pretty quick. So.
Well, it's interesting too to even think about that, right? And when you talk about media asset management specifically, it's one of the places historically that our industry, especially as you get to more of that smaller medium house, hasn't done incredibly well, right? Whether it's the freelancer who's working all year, maybe some of those production houses doing 3D, things like that. Being able to label and store those long term historically has just been a challenge. But how have you seen specifically maybe some of those smaller and medium markets, tools like this really been able to empower people?
I think for that, I think that's definitely a good advantage. I know some of those small and medium places have also stored a lot in the cloud too that didn't do proper metadata stuff. A lot of those guys are at an impasse in terms of now how do they go back to those archives and find out what they actually put there. So this might enable them to better leverage those archives down the road if they could have something automate to go through it, rip all that stuff, do the actual inferencing on that data, figure out who's in what shot and blah, blah, so on and so forth, right? That's a lot of work. You don't want to have a human have to go through all that, especially, say you're like in reality television, right? You're in any of those kind of places. Oh my gosh, where they shoot like a 300-to-1 ratio or worse, man.
Well, it truly is incredible to see some of the ways that whether it's AI, machine learning, obviously just general technological advances has continued to really uniquely impact the creator community. And one of the things that I love to see, whether it's tools like TikTok or editing on Instagram Reels or whatever, cloud-based editor what you want to use, is that people are finding their way into the industry in a ton of different ways. And, the challenges or the barriers to entry we're pulling those back, right? You don't now have to understand traditional media asset management workflows or log your own stuff, and you don't have to build entire workflows on the back end with switchers and routers and make sure everything's set up right. We now are set up as a community to really empower the people coming into the industry for the first time. Last question here, and we'll land the plane. What are some of the ways that you're seeing people jump into the industry and embrace these tools for the first time?
It's an interesting question. I guess it depends on which side. I'm constantly amazed at the amount of content creators coming in. I don't even want to call it from the bottom, but from like the YouTube space, TikTok space, all those kind of spaces, and becoming more and more professional, right? With the dearth of just absolute immense content out there, the only way to stand out is the quality. So them gaining hold of traditional techniques that we would have seen in broadcast space for, oh my gosh, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of dollars that are now mostly almost free to these communities. That's kind of blown me away. It's stuff that I would have taken for, now I kind of take for granted that I didn't, 10 years ago. And then that just moves its way up the chain, right? So all the way into the medium-sized places, and then into the broadcast spaces, and then that pushes the envelope so that the larger houses have to compete. So what do they need to do better now to stand out? So it's going to push the industry at all levels.
Well, Jordan Woods of Perifery, we appreciate you coming on the show today. Love hearing your thoughts about some of the ways that technology, AI, machine learning really have continued to impact our creator community, specifically in the broadcast and AV worlds. And we look forward to having you back on the show, but we appreciate you jumping on with us.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks.
And thank you for tuning into the show. If you'd like to join us again, be sure to subscribe and follow us on Pro AV Today. We appreciate you tuning in. We'll see you next time.